How's it going, everybody, and welcome to another installment of Tech Support Thursday. In this video, we're going to walk through your questions like we normally do, so I'm not going to waste any time. We're going to dive right into it. So, subnetting at the start needs to be double checked. Probably made a mistake there. Can you please provide us a virtualization courses roadmap and the recommended resources to study them from? So I would start here on this URL right there, and I would start going through the tracks. So from a core competency perspective, data center virtualization, DCV, is where you want to start. That's going to be your main thing. That's going to, how do you deploy ESXi? How do you work with virtual machines, storage, networking, compute, those type of things. Then deploy vCenter server, add your ESXi host to vCenter server, distributed switching, high availability, fault tolerance, things like that. You'll be able to get into clustering and all those good things. So I would highly recommend you guys go check that out and dig into the details behind it. So if you do that, that's a really good thing. You go through the process of learning how DCV works, then network virtualization and user computing. This is going to be your NSX platform. This is going to be your Horizon. You'll be able to play around with all these solutions, and you're like, okay, how do I do this? Well, the first thing I would recommend you guys do is go and get a VMUG Advantage license. I'm going to put that right here. So VMUG, for $210 a year, you get access to 365-day evaluation licenses for like 20 plus VMware solutions. And what it does, I'm not sure if it's going to, it gives you a lot of options to see what, let me scroll back up here to the top. So what you basically do is it gives you access to play with basically anything that's out there. So you can play around with vCloud Suite, vCenter Server, vCenter 7 and 8, VMware Cloud Foundation, vSphere 7 and 8, Tanzu, NSX Data Center Evaluation, Verni, NSX Advanced Load Balancer, vSAN, SRM, Cloud Management, Orchestrator. So it gives you a bunch of options available to you. Now, if you're looking at playing with it at just real high level, real basic stuff, and you have a decent computer, I'll say 32 gigs of RAM and a modern like i7 core processor with, like the 13th gen, I think they're up to now, you'd be able to deploy VMware Workstation on there and then go through the process of learning how to install ESXi, learn the storage, learn the compute, learn the networking, all that type of stuff. And then you'll be able to take it a step further by digging into, NSX and Horizon Advanced Edition 8 and, vRealize operations for Horizon. Now, that's how I did it for a long time, was I would just deploy it on my local computer, and I would go about going it that way. And with the, again, if you had a decent gaming rig, you should be good to go for a while. But if you want to take it a step further, I went out and I used the VMware hardware compatibility guide. So let me go and pull that up real quick too while I'm thinking about it. The HCL. And not the VMUG, the VMware. You can go here, pull this up, right, there you go. This is what I did. So knowing about this, I used this in order to do what I wanted to do. So I said, in order for me to play around with ESXi 8, what platforms, and you can go to your partner. So I said, from Cisco, update and review results. And so what it does is it'll tell you which CPU model and which particular platform you need to be running in order for this for you to run ESXi 8 on Cisco servers. Now this could be HP or Dell. So if I was coming here to Dell and review results, so you can look at this and say, okay, a PowerEdge R660XS running Xeon Silver, all these different CPU types. It'll tell you which particular server you need to go out and get. So it's like it's a number of sockets, it's 2, maximum cores per socket is 60. So if that's too expensive, maybe that's a $30,000 server. Well, you can start, going onto eBay and figuring out that. So let's go back over here to Cisco, and we'll look at what they are. So this is UCSB series. So we'll say next, and so we have a C220M5L running Xeon 6100s. So I don't see mine. Let's go to 100. So I went and bought, this is what I bought. I bought a C240 M5S right here. So based off that, go ahead and log into this guy real quick. This server cost me about $1,500 US. So what I did was M5L. So I went out and I bought a Cisco UCS C series. It's a C240, so it means it's 2RU, so it's about that tall or so. It's a U is about a 2-inch, a little under 2 inches tall. So the server's, probably 4 inches tall or so. And I've got two 22-core CPUs. So I've got two 22-core CPUs, Intel Gold 6152. And what I did is once I had the server, and the server, that was the big thing, is buying the server. I don't know if it's gonna M5. So I know, so M5, so up to 22 sockets. So it's been a little, here we go, M5 ML, M5L, right here, M5L, right? That's what I've got, M5L. So this is what I bought. I went out and I bought this particular server, so Cisco C240 M5L. So I spent a lot of time Googling this. And so then it was just a matter of going over to eBay. So we'll pull up eBay real quick. eBay.com. And so I'm not signed in. Well, actually I am. No, I'm not. So then it's a matter of going over here to eBay, and you just type in here Cisco UCS C240 M5. And so it's just a matter of going through and say, okay, what are my options here? So this one here is an M5 2x4116 CPUs. So then I was like, okay, well, it's not the individual platform that I need. It's the Xeon Gold 6152. Let's see what'll pop up there. Right here. So 24 SFF. So basically it's a server. So small form factor, 128 gigs of RAM. So this is about what I paid for it. Yeah, 64 gigs. These are a little steeper. I bought mine with 128 gigs of RAM, and I bought an additional 256. So it brought me to 384. So for between 1,500 and 4,000, you buy this server, and this basically future-proofs you for multiple iterations down the road. And it gives me the ability of running ESXi8. It gives me the ability of running NSX4. I can run Horizon 8. So it gives me that flexibility, but it was by doing the research, figuring out what box I could run, and making sure that I bought something that would scale up. Now, the cool thing about it is if ESXi 9, for example, comes out with Gold, and I just have to watch whatever Intel's doing with their iterations, maybe they come out with as long as the socket type matches, like the pinouts match up with the socket, then I should be able to just go buy new CPUs. And that would be ideally, right? Hopefully they don't change that out too much. I'd be able to go buy new CPUs. Let's say it's Gold plus 5,000. Let's throw just something out there randomly. I have no idea if that's where they're going with it. But let's say it's Gold plus 5,000. So then it would just be a matter of going on eBay and looking up Gold plus 5,000 CPUs. Let's say it's $400. Okay, fine. I buy two of them. So that's $800. The CPUs come to my house. I pull out the old ones, I put the new ones in, and as long as it's compatible, I should be good to go. So that's what I did. Now what that allows you to do is it gives me a platform to work from. So I can deploy a whole bunch of virtual machines to this particular server. And so I can do my hardcore data center virtualization, I can do hardcore VMware NSX, I can do hardcore end user computing. I can go through all of those iterations and become really, really good with the platform. Now, if you also couple that with CML, you can do a lot with that as well. Now, the only thing that would be a little tricky sometimes, and you might have to use your Google Foo to figure this one out, is finding a dedicated way to get the software routers. Some people would go with, was it pfSense? pfSense has a free router that you'd be able to roll out. But I would go, I know Cisco, so that's the direction I go with it. But if you were to deploy the capability, I think you, and if I'm not mistaken, if you download a QCOW2 image, you can convert it to an OVA. And then I think you might be able to run it inside of ESXi. I've never tried doing the opposite. I've always had the OVA and I've converted it to a QCOW2, but I think you can convert from QCOW2 to OVA and then export and then be able to run it in ESXi. But don't quote me on that one. But anyway, that's what I would do. That's literally what I did. So hopefully that answers your question and will give you some, at least a game plan and a pointer to figure out where to go. It's not cheap. So you're looking at, let's say the server's $1,500, and then you need to go out and buy more RAM. So this one comes with, this one's $2,200, so it comes with 2 CPUs and 512 gigs of RAM and the Rails from Poland. That's actually a pretty good deal. If I didn't already have it, I would buy it because I think the RAM cost me $300, $400, and the server. So I think I ended up spending, it was like $2,000 on the server. I've had it for about a year now, and it works great. I have no problems with it. It allows me to do everything I want to, but then it removes the frustration of me having to deal with the issues that I'm dealing with. And the cool thing about it is it pays for itself, right? It's running multiple. Right now I've got it running service provider, so it's got multiple topologies working on it, so I can use that to build out my workbook. And I'm using 25 gigs of RAM. 25 gigs of CPU, about a 90-ish gigs of RAM. So it's doing the job I would expect it to. Could I come in here and deploy NSX and data center virtualization? Sure, I could go through the entire platform by doing that. I could just power some of these boxes off that aren't really necessary and power them off, go through data center virtualization, go through NSX, go through end user computing. By the way, these are all things I plan on doing anyway, and putting together content material around them and stuff like that. And eventually I will get into AWS and Azure and Google Cloud and things like that, but just not on the priority list right now. I'm always trying to learn something new, and whether I actually use it in production, I like knowing how stuff works. But anyway, that's that. I know that was a very long answer to your question, but that's essentially, that's how I would go about doing that. Documentation, watching YouTube videos. You might have to go pay a small monetary or a small monthly fee to a training company's website in order to learn how to deal with NSX and data center virtualization and things like that. But sometimes you have to pay a little bit to learn how stuff works. Better to be a master of all trades or specialized? I will always say specialized. It's good to know more, but mastery takes a long time. What do they say? It's mastery takes 10,000 hours of consistent effort. So and that makes sense, because if you look at like union type of the union apprentice, journeyman, master, you're looking at 10,000 hours. So would I consider myself a master of networking? No, I wouldn't. Am I very well versed in it? Yes. Am I always learning? Yes. Like I'll give you a great example. I am part of the workbook that I'm building for service provider. I wanted to do just all the IP v4, v6 unicast routing before I started digging. Well, actually, I paused all my MPLS stuff because I just needed a break from it. So, but for right now, for whatever reason, I don't know why, I cannot get R3 and XR12 to form an OSPF v3 IPv4 unicast peering. Like I just can't get OSPF up between these guys. I've never tried it before. So I can get V2 to work just fine, but V3, I'm not sure. So, but I've been busy all day with work, so this is the first time I've actually had a chance to not be focused on work. So I was like, you know what? I will come back to this, but just giving you guys an idea of what it is that I'm working on and stuff like that. So it'll be kind of a cool topology once it's all built, but it's just one of the many things that I'm working on. But the server gives me the flexibility of doing that, right? So I can go in here and mess around with it and stuff like that. And if I wanted to host something, I could, so on and so forth. But I'm definitely going to say master versus specialized. Master, I'm sorry, other way around. I would always say specialized versus, I can tell you're from probably the UK because you're using S instead of a Z. But I would definitely say that specialized because it's not bad to be wide. And if I had to go back through and do things over again, I probably would start off again wider just so that I would be able to be that much more effective in my job. But at the end of the day, it's just one of those things where you have to take the good with the bad, right? If you get specialized, you may not know something else, but if you're a master of all, you may not know the answer because you haven't gone quite far enough yet, and you have to reach out to somebody else. Well, I like being that somebody else that you have to reach out to. Like that's always been my thing is I want to know how that type of stuff works, which is why when it comes to networking, routing protocols, that type of stuff, that's my bread and butter, right? You'll never be able to take that away from me. Take away every certification portfolio that any vendor has, it's not going to make a difference. Because I could walk in, be like, okay, what are you trying to do? Sure, no problem, let's go knock it out. I hear from a lot of senior network engineers that a system integrator that work in system integrators that ACI, SD-WAN, SDA are now everything and in huge demand. It's highly recommended that everyone's specialization is leaning towards these. How accurate, incorrect is this? Depends on the environment. As a matter of fact, I've worked with several customers over the past couple of years that have gotten rid of ACI because it was just annoyingly complex. Some customers love it. So I used to work with I literally personally know the guy. I don't talk to him very often, but I know the guy that wrote the book on ACI. He's a personal friend of mine. As a matter of fact, he and I worked together at my last employer and had to work on a couple of different projects together. So when you think about it from that respect, yeah, is ACI a great product? Sure. But for some reason, I don't know why, whoever developed it thought it was a great idea to make the logic to glue all of the different like things and the objects and how it all works, because I believe it's called object-oriented networking, made it, to me, overly complicated. So, sort of the way SD-WAN is, and then you come out with SDA and you've got this obnoxiously large platform for DNA Center, or what do they call it now, Catalyst Center? Something like that. But you've got DNA that you roll out, and like I've heard rumblings of the new version of CML that they've done a better job with Cat 9K, and it's basically just a beefier version of Nexus 9K. And I mean, it took them a long time to get Nexus 9K figured out, so they probably just borrowed some dudes from the Nexus BU and figured that out, or NSBU, whatever they call it. But I would say they're popular, but they're not the end-all be-all. So there's plenty of people that aren't doing SD-WAN, but although it's the norm going forward. I mean, if you're not doing SD-WAN, you probably have a good reason for it. And I've listened to quite a few customers explain to me why they don't go SD-WAN, and flexibility, like they're not growing on the WAN. SD-WAN doesn't buy them anything. If you have, or really the benefit to SD-WAN is being able to take traffic the way you want it to go and be able to look at things and route based off the application. Application-aware routing is a big deal. But, to me, the firewall vendors that are out there, your Palo Altos, your Fortinets, your trying to think of who else is a big firewall vendor that I know has a good SD-WAN platform. I can't think of sort of Silver Peak is popular, but you know that's where SD-WAN really comes into play, is being able to be able to move traffic from a what wasn't latent circuit that was highly latent, a lot of latency, over to a circuit that's not highly latent anymore. Being able to intelligently move traffic without you having to go in and do something. That is that's an SD-WAN capability. But to me, putting SD-WAN on something that isn't a firewall, where you have to bake in NGFW capabilities, is a waste of time. So that's just my take on the situation. But these are all, you've got data center SDN, you've got WAN SDN, and you've got campus SDN. So you've got SDN that has been spread amongst all the different parts of the network. Then you also have the cloud piece where you're going through a GUI and you're configuring how to set up your cloud. So those are all whiz bang wow cool things, but at the end of the day, you have to know what's going on underneath the hood in order to, if there's something not working correctly, you have to understand the underlying piece of what is it trying to automate. Now I've spent a lot of time in the WAN, so I understand how crypto works, I understand how VPNs work, I can stand them up, I can get them deployed, all that good stuff that goes along with it. Every vendor's got their own quirks to figure this type of stuff out and get it rolled out. But if you take that into consideration, DMVPN, if you've gone through the process of setting that up with NHRP and GRE tunnels and all that type of stuff, and EIGRP and front door VRF and cryptography, that's all SD-WAN does, is automate all of that and orchestrates it. It's all stood up in the back end. But knowing how to do all those things manually makes me understand SD-WAN that much better, because it's something that I've been doing for the past 15 years. So to me, that's really where you get into it. Same thing with ACI. It's nothing. It's really just a fancy way of deploying VXLAN through a GUI. And Nexus Dashboard Fabric Controller does the exact same thing. And to me, it's simpler. So are there capabilities that you can do with ACI that are going to be more challenging in NDFC? Sure. But if you've got a lot of integration with load balancers and firewalls, and you need to get to integrate third-party services or service insertion and things like that, then ACI makes sense in certain respects. So you have to take into consideration, what is the end goal you're trying to do. So the one thing I hate about vendors and engineers, and there's a lot of them out there that do this, is they come up with a protocol, like LISP. LISP makes no sense to me whatsoever. And I know there's a LISP part of the internet. LISP made no sense to me. And the reason why it didn't make any sense to me is because there's already protocols for that. And I've had this discussion with multiple people, and LISP is a beautiful protocol and all that type of stuff. Yeah, sure, it's a cool protocol, but to me it was a solution looking for a problem. And I've said that numerous times, where if you look at SD Access, what does it use? It uses VXLAN and LISP. Why VXLAN and not BGP? Well, because BGP is a push model. It's just going to send you everything it knows about. Where LISP is a pull model. It is going to go out, ask you for the information, and bring it back. It's like DNS, right? So if you don't need it, why give it to you? That's kind of the idea behind it. PIM sparse mode versus PIM dense mode. If you understand how sparse and dense works when it comes to multicast and how propagation works, then that's going to make sense to you. If it doesn't, then go learn the difference between sparse and dense mode. Then you'll understand the push versus the pull model, and that's the difference between LISP and BGP in the control plane. So that's how I take it. Do I have a problem with LISP? No, I think it's cool. I've demoed it a few times and worked with it, but at the end of the day, to me, it was a protocol that was developed to be a solution looking for a problem that didn't actually exist. So, and as you can see, or at least the way that I see it, is it was bastardized into SD Access because Cisco came up with this protocol that really had no, what was the use case for it? Maybe DMVPN phase 4, if you were looking for flexibility and you wanted to run get VPN over the top of it. I mean, sure. But at the end of the day, to me, it was kind of a waste of time. It's a protocol that I've never really dug into. I understand how it works with map resolver, mapping servers, and which is a DNS-like operation. Then you have your proxies to get off to the internet and your non-Lisp environment, all that type of stuff. I've gone through the iterations to learn it, but at the end of the day, to me, it's like it's a waste of time. I just don't understand Lisp, and that's the core control plane for SDA. So you have to know both. VXLAN is easy, right? VXLAN is a piece of cake to get my head wrapped around, but SDA, on the other hand, that can be a little problematic. Voice and data, yeah, so that's fine. This guy just put in here some configuration in there. Maybe he's showing me the steps that I need to do in order to get layer 3 port channels to work on these switches. I don't know, maybe. Glad you enjoyed it. Yeah, so I'm going to continue to talk about service provider, stuff like that. Just it's going to be the way it is. I know I'm eventually going to pass the SP exam. Like I said, I'm in no hurry to get there. I'm taking steps in the right direction. Writing the book has actually been a big help because it's definitely getting me. It allows me to centralize my config. So then it's just a matter of, I'll go ahead and pull it up real quick. It allows me to, I have a table of contents over here. So if I want to navigate to something, I can't remember how to do a particular thing, how do I configure SRTE, software-defined networking, PCE, policy creation, push to PCC. Okay, on the PCE, this is what I configure. And then on the client, I do a show segment routing traffic engineering policy, and it pops up. And then I can see the label. I can see the push. And I do a ping. I do a trace route. I can see the labels popping up. Everything looks good, right? That allows me to, if I need to know what the config is, I just pop over here and look at the config, right? That's a benefit. And this is running on XRV 9Ks. I power them down because I focus on other stuff. But, it doesn't take long to dig into it if you've got a platform. And by the way, I bought a second server. One of the two servers that I have is a Dell R810. I'll pull this up real quick. I have a Dell R810. I have this guy right. Is it this guy? It's basically this server right here. This is E5 4860s. I've got E78 420s, or I forget which. 4870s. But they're 10 core, so it's 4 10-core CPUs, and I've got 500 gigs of RAM in it. So I've got Eve Pro bare metal install on that, and I can run 39 Nexus 9Ks on it. And I did actually try to get that working in I had a really big customer that I was working with, so it was a good deal. So no hard drives. So 128 gigs of RAM, that's not bad, but that was so for all of my workbook stuff that I'm doing, it's going to be XRV 9K and things like that. I'm doing a bare metal install of Eve on that so that I can run those boxes the way that I need to. So yeah, I'm going to continue to talk about them, what I'm doing to practice on them, because there's no point in me being quiet about it if somebody else is studying for it. So thank you for your the rah-rah to get me past the SP exam. Nick Russo mentioned on his Twitter account that 20 to 30 new topics ended up at the end of 2023. Many are 5G. They're probably going to be multiple choice questions. I'm not too worried about it. Anything that's design specific on the SP blueprint, I just don't care about right now. That'll come down the road, which I would assume are going to be in the beginning part of the exam and the design, but I will focus on those when I get closer. How do you feel about the Network Services Orchestrator? I think that's what NSO stands for. And the part of NSO on the SP exam. I don't know. Again, it's one of those things where I know it's there. It's a topic of discussion I will get into, but I'll pull up the Googles and search the interwebs when I get closer about that. How do you feel about Cisco Exam Solutions dumps? So my personal opinion on them is if that's how you need to pass your exams, you need to spend more time to study. So I don't like what they do because they water down the value of the certification. But at the end of the day, it's people are going to use them, and you're never going to know. But to me, some people I know have used them to make sure they pass an exam on the first attempt, because it's like whatever amount of money it is that they have to put out, they're just guaranteeing a pass. Um, I also know people that have taken them just because of the simple fact that they don't feel like putting the time and effort into learning the material, and it becomes blatantly obvious, or in most cases it does, down the road when they don't know how to do whatever they're claiming to do. So, I've had people come to me, and there was this, at a former job, I had a student that was a triple CCNP? Might have been four. Might have been four CCNPs, and I forget what they were in. Route switch security, I want to say data center and wireless, I believe is what he was certified in. Or it might have been collaboration. But anyway, not important. I think he had like 3 or 4 CCNPs, and he came through the training program that I was running that was meant for CCNAs. And he was asking a bunch of questions, and because he had introduced himself, and I was like, oh my god, how are you a quad CCNP and you don't know how to join? I think one of them was a data center. He was asking about how VXLAN worked, because he didn't really understand it that well. Like, how are you a CCNP and you don't know how VXLAN works? Especially a data center CCNP? Because that one stood out to me. That's not an easy CCNP to earn. So yeah, they're just, people are going to use them. There's no way of getting around it. I worked for a company a long time ago where I had to go take some, it was a partner level certification that I had to go take, like the systems engineer for field engineering or something stupid I had to take, and they literally handed me a brain dump for the exam, and I was like, what's this for? And it's like, this way here you're guaranteed to pass. We need you to pass in order for partner certification. We just pay for the exam dump. And I'm like, oh, okay. So I looked at the exam code. I went to Cisco's website. I downloaded the exam topics, and I knew like 99% of it already. So, but then again, I was a CCIE already, so it was an easy thing for me to pass. So I don't think they're a great idea. People shouldn't use them, but what are you going to do? People, what's the term out there? If you're not cheating, you're not trying. I guess that kind of, I know in a lot of the military podcasts that I listen to, you'll hear them jokingly say, well, if you're not cheating, you're not trying. So it's like, if you're not trying to find ways to either circumvent the system or trying to shortcut or optimize something or make yourself more efficient in some way, you're not trying hard enough. Sure. It is what it is. Have you ever configured a PE before, almost from scratch? Never from scratch. I've done, back in the day, I used to have to do layer 3 VPN, and I would have, we'd have to get a circuit landed on a physical interface with a VLAN tag, doing like .1Q and Q and Q tunneling and things like that. And we would have to do BGP peerings over the top of them. So I've done that type of stuff in the past. But once you've configured a couple PEs, it's not that hard. How are you juggling Fortinet, CCDE, CCIE, SP in one instance? Well, number one, I'm not doing it all at one time. That would be impossible. So Fortinet, my work computer's to my right. I work on that during the day, and that's where all my Fortinet training is done. And then when I'm dealing with other stuff like CCDE, I spend an hour a day maybe going through the material, just taking notes. Again, it's design. I'm planning on taking the CCDE written exam at Cisco Live in Vegas in June, so I've got plenty of time. And SP, I'm just monkeying around. I won't say monkeying around with it, just taking my time. May you please advise what resources you are studying for VMware certifications? You used. CBT Nuggets has a lot of really good content for data center, NSX, and for end user computing. So I used a lot of that. Nobody else really does the job that they do on it because they have a lot of VMware guys that do the work there. So I don't think they have any official books, but Udemy, CBT Nuggets, they're pretty good. After digging a bit in the VMware site, the question I would be, guess, what would you recommend for someone after studying CCIE, network virtualization or data center? Data center virtualization first, then followed up by network virtualization. DCV is going to be your core competency, and then after that you'll get into NSX and other stuff. You seem like a rock fan. Favorite band of all time? I got a lot of bands I like. Huge Metallica fan. Disturbed, Godsmack, uh, Seven Dust, Rob Zombie. I mean, I was fortunate enough this past year. My oldest son got me tickets to see Stained and Godsmack in Milwaukee. The year before that, my wife and I went to see Disturbed, Chevelle, Lamb of God, and New Medicine. So I try to get out to at least one concert a year, at least in the summertime, and it's a good time. The bigger the company, the bigger the networking company, the more a cog in the machine your role is. That's pretty true. And you'd have to go higher up in the organization to make a difference. I expected the QoS or segment routing would be the most painful topic for you for CCISP. Didn't expect TE at all because you said you reached a great level of MPLS implementation and troubleshooting from your EI experience. So when it comes to EI, take SD-WAN and SD-Access, take the SD-ARC infrastructure away, and that's just routing and switching version 5. They sprinkle a little bit of extra crypto in there with IV2, which actually makes it Flex VPN. But MPLS is like super, super, super basic. There's nothing complicated about the MPLS you do in the infrastructure exam. Now you get into service provider, you're not even you won't even survive the first question if you know how to just do basic MPLS. You need to be able to set up an L3 VPN in your sleep without even thinking about it. That's what's needed for that. So there's from core routing, there's probably 20, maybe 25% overlap between route switch, enterprise infrastructure, and then service provider. And then once you get past core routing with IGP and BGP, and then you get an MPLS, and you have inter-AS, and you got carrier supporting carrier, you got segment routing, multicast VPN. So there's a lot that doesn't even come close with that. I'm very surprised to hear that redistribution was your most people routing topic, and that you found it harder than OSP at BGP SD-WAN. Equally surprised to hear in switching port channel aggregation was harder than in spanning tree. Well, spanning tree is nothing more than a cop, right? And then redistribution, it's about raw feedback. How do you prevent a loop? So you have to be able to see, especially when you have multiple points of redistribution. You redistribute a route in this way, and the traffic comes in, and then it loops back over to this guy. Well, how do you prevent that route from getting from here over to here, and then it passes through, and then ends up coming back over here, and then you end up getting, and not just a reconvergence loop, which is temporary. So you get a what do they call it? What kind of loop is that? I forget. But you get this continuous loop where it keeps doing this. Well, you got to be able to block that through route tags, and if you match tag this, deny the route from being redistributed back in, things like that. So that to me was more difficult than doing normal routing. In STP, it's simple. You got one root bridge and one backup root bridge. So a port channel aggregation, it was hard at first because of the fact that I was trying to understand how you take two physical devices, run a cable from each down to a single device, and it wasn't until I was introduced to stacking and VSS that problem went away. Because how do you, there are two different port channel IDs, so how's that going to work? That's why it was difficult. How hard, easy are VMware certifications compared to Cisco certifications? In my opinion, Cisco are very hard and require a lot of studying. I would agree with you on that one. Can I give you a percentage? I'd say VMware is probably 25 to 50% easier. You only have to, I think, out of 500, I think you got to get a 300 or better, which I think is like 70%. So VMware doesn't require you to be super, super knowledgeable. Would you consider CCIE exam to be the EIBA 2? Nope, not even close. I don't know if V2, I know Enterprise Infrastructure 1.1, I think, is the current iteration when they made their slight update. But no, there's no way that CCIE Enterprise Infrastructure will ever be able to hold a candle to service provider. Just simply for the fact of doing with multiple service providers, MPLS VPNs, Layer 2 VPN, multicast. It takes everything that you learned in enterprise infrastructure and compounds it multiple times. I'd love to hear how you manage your time, avoid distractions. So it's just a matter of, I'm not great with time management. So it's just when I have time to dig into the technology, I take the time. My company wants me to study for NSE 4. That's a good platform. I think that they've got some solid stuff. From a difficulty perspective and wide range of the topic exams covered, how would you compare V4 to V5? I think V4 is going to be, V5 will be a little easier because they removed some of the fluff. They got rid of the MGRE L3 VPN. They got rid of LISP. They got rid of DMVPN. I don't think DMVPN was actually on the exam, but they made it more difficult in some respects too, because they added in a lot more segment routing. So yeah, it's hard to say exactly. Okay. Which image was used for iOS CA and other routers? That was just the regular Layer 3 iOS device. Nope, I don't know why you're getting that. Is it possible to get this lab from you with images? Nope. If you're talking about pictures, yes. But the actual images, go to CML, pay the $200, download it. This and Kevin Wallace Deep Dive is the best stuff on YouTube. Thank you for that. Okay, cool. So that's all the questions we had for this week. I'm going to talk really briefly about what it is that I'm working on right now. And we'll wrap this puppy up. But one of the things that I'm working on is putting together a service provider, CCNP service provider series. As I work through all of the topics here, it'll be what's the word I'm looking for? It'll start to come together once I have more of the workbook put together. But the idea is to go through, architecture, and then work my way through core routing, and then dive into MPLS, then dive into segment routing, Layer 3 VPN, Layer 2 VPN, multicast VPN, all that type of stuff, and put it into one really big video series. But that's going to take some time. That's a big undertaking. So, but it'll cover all three of the major blueprints. I don't know how I'm going to do this one here, the connecting cloud something or other. The cloud interconnect. Yeah, I don't know how I'm going to work that one in, but I'll figure out something. But, so yeah, there's that. So a lot of cool stuff in the process, giving myself lots of stuff to dig into and learn. So with that being said, I will catch all of you guys in the next video. If you haven't already done so, please like, share, and subscribe. There will be a link to the sample workbook and the workbook link in the description below if you guys are interested in taking a look at the enterprise workbook. I will be looking at doing some updates to that here pretty soon, so I just needed some time to get some stuff squared away. But like I said, if you guys have any questions, comments, concerns, feedback, leave that in the comment section below. Please like, share, and subscribe, and I'll catch you guys in the next one.